Hey guys, so last time we were reading Ranger in Time. It was about the Oregon Trail. So I've kind of got an Oregon Trail set up behind me here, covered wagons, campfires, um, basically packing everything in like they were, it was Sam's dad was doing. And then last time we had left off, they were loading the wagon, and Sam was kind of daydreaming and lost Amelia, his 3-year-old little sister. We also know that he has another sister. And then we were kind of introduced to, we went from that time all the way back to like our time now. And we met, let's see, who was it? Luke and Sadie. Yeah, Luke and Sadie, and then Ranger. And then Ranger found a box, and there was some time travel stuff going on. And he was almost a search and rescue dog, but didn't quite pass it because he's easily distracted. And so now we're going to go back to, it says chapter 3, Trouble in the Town Square. So I'm hopeful that maybe Ranger can help them find Amelia. Let's read chapter 3 and 4 today. Ranger didn't recognize this place. He didn't know where he was, but he knew how to find. He'd practice with Luke and Dad over and over. They'd hold out an old shirt or a hat and say, "Find this, find that, Ranger." First, Ranger would smell the thing. Sometimes it smelled like rain or dirt or other things. He would always smell the person, too. Once Ranger knew that person's smell, he could find it anywhere, even if there were 1,000 other smells to sort through. Ranger could pick out the important one and follow it until he found the person. When he did, Luke would scratch Ranger's ears and say, "Good dog, good boy," and then they would go home. Home. Ranger sniffed the dusty air. Where was Luke? Maybe if he did his work, if he found the person, Luke would come say, "Good job," and they could go home. Ranger trotted up to the woman to see what she wanted him to find. Her eyes were red. Her eyes were wet. Ranger nuzzled her hand, but she waved him away. "Go on, dog." She didn't offer anything to smell, so she just ran off calling, "Amelia, Amelia." But then a boy came. He looked about as old as Luke, with longer hair, and he held something in his hand. Ranger sniffed at it. The boy held it out. It was a little cloth person, like the one Sadie played with at home. The ones Luke liked to hide from her. "This is Amelia's doll," the boy sighed. Ranger sniffed the doll all over. He could smell smoke and dirt and another dog, but mostly he could smell person. Was it the person Ranger was supposed to find? He sniffed again, then he looked up at the boy. "You smell her?" The boy looked at Ranger with frantic eyes. "I'll go find her. I've got to find her." Find? Ranger could do that. He tipped his head and waited for the boy to put on his harness the way Dad and Luke did, but the boy just stood there. So Ranger sniffed the air and started walking. He paused and looked back at the boy who was standing in the same spot. Luke and Dad always followed him. Ranger barked. "What is it?" the boy asked. "You want me to come with you?" "Can you find her?" "Find?" Ranger barked again. The boy ran to catch up, and together they weaved through the busy crowds. The street here wasn't hard and smooth like at home. It was loose and dusty under Ranger's paws, and the cars here didn't roar or zoom. They had bigger wheels, huge, drooling animals chugging them along. "Amelia!" the boy shouted, but Ranger hadn't found her smell. "Maybe over here." The boy headed toward a noisy building with horses and men crowded outside. As they got closer, Ranger's nose filled with 1,000 scents. Horses, men, shaggy animals, bacon, chicken, smoke, and then that. Ranger stopped and sniffed. It was the Amelia smell. He ran in a circle and found where the scent was strongest and followed it. But the boy said, "Uh-oh," and stopped. Ranger pricked up his ears. Angry voices filled the air. Ahead of them, 2 sweaty men circled each other, shouting, one shoving the other so hard he flew backward into one of the other horses. It neighed and reared up. The other horses and mules fretted and stomped the dirt. The man who had fallen got up and ran to the other man. The crowd was getting thicker. Tense voices buzzed in the hot afternoon air. It made the fur on Ranger's neck prickle. The boy must have felt the trouble too. "Come on, dog," he whispered. "We better go. She's not here." But she was. The Amelia smell was getting stronger. Ranger kept going into the thick of the crowd without checking to see if the boy had followed. One of the angry men lunged at the other, and Ranger had to leap out of their way. But he kept going, kept smelling, and finally, there. The tiny girl stood in the center of the mob. She toddled close to one of the shaggy animals and reached up for the whip of a tail. Ranger barked. He looked for the boy and barked again. There was a shout, then a gasp from the crowd. Horses neighed, hooves thundered, voices hollered, "Whoa!" And the square exploded with a swirling cloud of dust. Amelia! No, Chapter 4, Wagon Train West. Amelia! Sam caught only a glimpse of his sister before it happened. She was across the square next to one of the oxen. The dog was there too, barking like crazy. But the moment Sam stepped into the square, one of the men tackled the other and they rolled through the dust. It was all too much for the nervous horses. One reared up and then another, and the next thing Sam knew, a yoke of oxen had broken free, and the beasts were racing towards him. "Watch out, son!" A rough hand closed around his arm and yanked him out of the way, just as the oxen thundered past. When they were gone, the man let go of Sam's arm and shook his head. "These young men from St. Louis are nothing but trouble. They got gold fever, and it's turned them into a pack of fools." Sam could only stare as the men in the square rushed after oxen and terrified horses. He looked across to where he'd seen his sister. She was gone. Without thanking the man or saying goodbye, Sam took off across the square. "Amelia!" She didn't answer. People were staring at Sam now, but he didn't care. He swiped tears from his eyes with his shirt sleeve, then stood in the center of the square, searching. He couldn't see her anywhere. Sam felt a hand on his arm. "Do you need help?" He turned and saw a girl about his age. Her eyes were full of concern. "Who's Amelia?" "My sister," Sam said. "I was supposed to be watching her, and I'll help look," the girl said, pushing through the crowd. "Amelia!" Sam called even louder. It was hopeless. Even if she answered, he'd never be able to hear in all this chaos. But then he heard a bark. Sam whirled around towards the sound, and there, tucked into the blacksmith's doorway, was the dusty golden dog standing guard over Amelia. No, not standing guard so much as holding her prisoner. Every time Amelia tried to toddle back into the busy square, the dog moved to block her way. Sam ran over and scooped up his sister in his arms. "Oh, we found you." "The doggy did," she said, looking at the dog and dog slobber on her skirt. "He pushed me over here." The older girl gave the dog a pat. "Good boy. Thanks for offering to help me," Sam told her. "Oh, it was no trouble. I have plenty of experience tracking down little runaways." She smiled at Amelia. "You have a sister too?" The girl shook her head. Mother and father wanted a big family, but only got me. But I've got lots of cousins to help look after, though. They've already gone west, and we're going to join them now. I'm Sarah Ferguson, by the way." "Sam Abbott." He shook her hand. "We're off to the Oregon Territory tomorrow. My Uncle Thomas and his family went out last year." Amelia squirmed, so Sam put her down, but kept a tight grip on her hand. The dog stayed close to her, too. "Maybe you should come with us, dog. You're better at watching Amelia than I am." Ranger barked and licked Sam's hand. Sarah laughed. "He'd make a fine nursemaid." "I'd better get back to my parents. I hope I'll see you on the trail." She waved and hurried off towards the wagons. Sam bent down to scratch behind the dog's ear, then touched the metal box Ranger carried. "What's that?" Sam lifted it from around Ranger's neck, opened it up, and looked at the bandages and vials tucked inside. "You carrying these supplies for someone?" Sam looked around. "Where's your owner, dog?" Ranger tipped his head. Where was Luke? Ranger had found the person, so wasn't it time to go home? But then Ranger remembered back to one of his last training sessions. He found Luke hiding in an old barrel and was ready to get his ears scratched and go home, but Dad waved a baseball hat and said, "Find more." Ranger had to keep searching until he found Luke's friend Will behind a big box. Sometimes more than one person needed to be found. Could this be one of those times? "You're lost, aren't you?" Sam looked the dog over. "Maybe you really can't come with us." Ranger didn't know what else to do, so he followed Sam and little Amelia back to the Abbott's wagon. The person called Ma gave Ranger a grumpy look at first, but when Sam told her what happened, she softened and tossed Ranger a scrap of bacon. It was greasy and salty and good. Sam had a bigger family than Luke. Besides his little sister Amelia and their parents, Sam had a big sister named Lizzie and a baby brother named Isaac, who rode around in Ma's arms most of the time. Amelia was always trying to wander, though. Ranger stayed close to her while the rest of the family packed barrels and crates. They tucked Ranger's metal box from the garden alongside some tools and even loaded the chicken coop onto their wagon. When it was full and the big animals were attached to the front, Sam knelt down in the dirt next to Ranger. "You're coming with us, right? Right, boy?" Ranger looked around for Luke. Where was he? Sam scratched Ranger behind his ear and stood up. "It's time to head out on the trail." Ranger looked for Luke again. He couldn't find him, but he saw the little Amelia girl tugging away from her big sister's hand, trying to run off. Ranger decided he needed to help look after her. Out on the trail, wherever that was, Sam was going. It looked like all the bacon was going, too. Maybe Luke would be there, too. So when the Abbott family left Independence, Missouri that morning, Ranger followed their wagon down the well-worn path out of town. So it looks like they are ready to rock. They are headed out on the Oregon Trail. I cannot wait to see what else we learn. And Beckett came and he's kind of been listening to the story too. So we will read the next few chapters in a couple days. Bye, guys. Tell them bye, Beckett.
Bye.